process of making a movie, starting with writing, is long, and it's really like a multi-marathon experience. For me, what's most enjoyable is moments of discovery. Many of them come in the writing, some come in the conceptualization of how you're going to shoot some come, in rehearsal with the actors, some come in the actual performance on camera, and some come in the editing room, some come in music. In general, the conceptual stage is the most exciting to me.
I found this little review for fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, and it sounded great. And I got the manuscript and immediately fell in love with Nini and the other characters.
She said, "Read the book." I said, "Well, tell me what it's about." She said, "Read the book."
He said, "Well, just send a synopsis." And I said, "No, I'm not going to send a synopsis. You have to read the book." And I sent it over to him in France, and he fell in love too.
I read it and said to him, "John, why do you have to pick tough ones to do? Why can't you do a nice science fiction movie where two guys save the earth?" And he said, "There's great universal emotionality in this movie," and of course there was, in this book. And of course there was.
When I got the phone call that someone was interested in doing the movie of the book, I was absolutely stunned. It had never occurred to me that this book would be a movie.
This was a fantastic piece of writing that had great humanity. It was very funny. It offered John, as a director, great characters to work with.
When I started to write this book, it was in the 80s, and we were going through a pretty kind of rough time in the world, and I thought, I'd like to kind of get back to where people were nice to each other, even though the country was going through a hard time, people pulled together. And it really did pull people together, black, white, poor, rich, and I just sort of, I think it was my own personal longing to get back to that kind of world that made me want to recreate it.
I went to Norman Lear's company because of Norman's reputation and because they were off the beaten track as I was. And they were interested in it, and they were willing to put up a limited amount of money for a writer.
And we had Carol Sobieski write our first draft, which was a magnificent script. It was a different movie, but it was a magnificent script.
The script was a musical, with the old people and the young people in the past and present singing numbers in the nursing home. It was very inventive, very unusual, a lot of fun, and had nothing to do with the movie I wanted.
He was in charge of the making of the development process. It was not done to please Universal Pictures. It was done to please himself.
So at that point, I went to Fannie Flagg, and I asked Fannie if she would come in and work on the screenplay.
I didn't feel, when I first started the project, that I could be objective. I thought I was sort of too close to it. But fortunately, there was another writer on the project first, and she and John had sort of worked out the characters that they wanted to feature and the stories they wanted to feature, so that made it easier for me.
And she'd only written one screenplay prior to that, and I think she had a rough time.
It's very difficult because you have been in a room alone for, and as far as I'm concerned, because I take a long time to write books, 5 or 6 years, and these characters are just in your head, and you sort of think that that's the only place they are, and then all of a sudden you're in a room with people and they are discussing these characters too, and it's very strange.
So about page 70, she quit. After she quit, we had exhausted all the money that I had gotten from Norman Lear, so for no money I wrote the script for the next about 2 or 3 years. And finally, and to Fannie's credit, when she read what I had written, she responded very, very well to it, which I thought was a very classy act. She didn't quit in a fit of pique. She quit because she was perhaps overwhelmed or wasn't confident or whatever combination of things, but she showed to me a tremendous amount of class.
John ultimately wrote probably 8 or 10 drafts of the movie himself, really putting in his heart and soul into the film. And then Fannie came back again.
I really like to write about middle-class America because to me, those are the heroes and heroines of this country and what makes this country go.
The characters seemed so rich and original, and I still love the relationship so much between Iggy and Ruth. It's just unique. I think also unique in film history, unique in literature, and the sense of humor that they shared.
The humor in this film comes out of great situations and small, stupid things sometimes, which is like life. The humor's in the writing as well. I mean, Fanny in her book and the screenplay that she and John has written captures a lot of the spirit of people.
These particular people that I write about in this Fried Green Tomatoes are people who quietly changed other people's lives and lived very moral and loving, good lives and never get much credit.
You know, my aspirations were to try, at least to try, or go die trying to make a great movie, was to make these characters so specific and so memorable that they, on one hand, did justice to the book, and on the other hand, you know, became memorable unto themselves.
People just deal with one another as human beings, and that's what exists in these two families.
It's nice to see something break through, like the roles of the women in Fried Green Tomatoes. They're strong, they're feminine, they're sexy, they're whimsical, they're people.
What you've got is a story about people, and I think that's its value.
The people, they're the people, the caliber of the people, their relationship to each other, their guts. I loved it. I loved that. I think that's what we're all about at our best. And I like to see movies about people at their best.
And when the thought of Kathy came out, which was fairly early on, I went, oh, that's it, you know what I mean? She'd just surprise everybody.
I picked up the script and I couldn't put it down. It was so good. And I called Susan, my agent at the time, and I said, I got to do this. This is such a great part. And I knew that Jessica Tandy would be playing Ninny, and so that was really exciting to me.
I've seen her perform, and I've admired her enormously, and everything she does is different and special. And so I was looking forward enormously, I am looking forward enormously to working with her.
I had done one movie prior to this, a movie for television that I directed. And I had written that one for Colleen Dewhurst. And this one I wrote for Jessica Tandy. And I don't know if that's a good idea. It worked out in both cases for me. But if your heart is completely set on one person, you don't get them. It's not like, you know, a lover that you can replace, because a film is different than a lover. It lasts forever.
We were at the Oscars together, and I remember running into Jessica afterwards, and we were having our first rehearsal the very next day after the Oscars, and Diane Wiest was there too, and we'd all sort of known each other in New York, and we were all kind of jumping up and down because we were so excited about things, and Jessica had won the year before, and I had won that year, and so it was kind of a neat moment, and then to be going and meeting with Jessica at John Evanet's the next day was just a real high point for me, to be in her presence.
And I had a feeling in that one day that we rehearsed together, we speak the same language, we understand each other, and that's a marvelous feeling. It takes away your nerves. You can get into the feeling of, I like to say, put on the bones and skin and flesh of that character that you're playing, and you can disappear. You don't have to monitor yourself all the time. It happens. And she's very supportive of that.
She was in her 80s at the time we did the film, but her excitement for it was the same as if she was 16 and she'd just been given her first big part. And that kind of life and enjoyment and excitement was, I found, really stimulating.
Some of what makes a great actress or an actor is not just the ability to take a direction, it's the ability to take that direction so far. How far can you take it? And Jessica could take it as far as anybody. There was one moment when we were shooting outside the nursing home when I had set this long 300-foot tracking shot up, and it was Kathy was complaining about her life. Jessica came up with stress tabs as a solution, and then Jessica was going to launch into the story of Albert, her son. And I realized after doing the rehearsal that I had Jessica on the wrong side of the camera for the second part, of the shot because she was going to be speaking and I wanted to be favoring her as we were tracking. So I said to Jessica, could you get to the other side of the camera when you get up from the chair with Kathy? And she nodded her head, and we rolled the camera, and we played the scene from the beginning. They sat there.
Tomatoes before this movie, and I've spent a lot of time in the South, and they do exist, and you know, but I'd never had them until the movie came out. And everywhere I went for the next 5 years, even if I hadn't ordered them, they appeared, you know, fried green tomatoes. So I've sampled them in Italy, in London, in France, and never in the South.
I thought they were just completely vile. I thought it was and I will eat anything fried. I mean, if you fried this carpet, I would eat it, you know. I would eat anything dipped in cornstarch and, you know, put in the skillet. But this, I don't know, maybe I got an old one, maybe it was a little soggy, but it was not tasty.
I don't remember the first time I ever tried fried green tomatoes because I'm from the South, and I know we must have had them when I was growing up.
The first time I ever had fried green tomatoes was probably like most Southern children when I was about 3 or 4, and I loved them.
Well, I had them as soon as we got down there, of course, you know. And then when I got back, you know, I was in the movie, so my mom, you know, we're having fried green tomatoes tonight. I'm like, oh, again? You know, like she's never made them before, but suddenly, because I'm in the movie, she starts making them.
I eat them all the time now. My wife makes them with canola oil. I can't say that because we live in LA, but we make them here because they're sweet and they're succulent and they have a slightly sort of sharp, bitter taste along with the sweetness. That's like no flavor on earth. They're just fantastic.
If you've ever had a fried green tomato, and I have had a fried green tomato, they're really good. And it's sort of, in a way, the wonder and the enigma of the South rolled up into just one dish, you know? It's a tomato that hasn't made it to ripeness. It's dipped in batter. It's bad for you, but it tastes really, really good.
Fried green tomatoes.
It's just really good.
They're not bad.
It wasn't a taste treat.
I don't even like tomatoes much less fried green tomatoes.
I think maybe it just makes for a good title.
You know, if you've never had them, they're really quite good, but they have to be done just right.
This here's fried green tomatoes, the real thing. Try them. This is the cafe. This was once a hardware store when we first came here. And we turned it into a cafe, and this is where we shot the whole movie, basically. And the cafe was designed, follow me if you can, so that we'd have certain sight lines, because Idgie and Curtis Smoot were sitting over there, and Sipsy was over here, and if you can see that door through there, you could see Big George and the barbecue back out there. So what I did is I had Barbara Lang, my designer, create sight lines so I could see what I wanted to see. One of the things I liked about Barbara's design, it was her idea, was this kind of horseshoe shape for the cafe, because it allowed you to be on either side of Idgie and Ruth and gave me some real good staging options. That was something she came up with after doing a lot of research, and I thought it was a brilliant choice, and I think it works well practically too for the restaurant now. There may have been 20 people in the whole area. When I was there, there was no one there. We shot there for 16 days and changed the face of that town and good parts of Georgia by shooting there.
It really created an authenticity that made me feel like I was in a real place and I was playing a real person, and you know, it made me feel as though I had no excuse. I had to be real. I had to believe everything.
It's one thing to rehearse and to you know, walk through scenes, but when you finally put on the clothes and you get on the set, you know, you really feel like you're back in time.
When you're writing a book, it's only in your head, and all of a sudden I'm walking down a street that was real, and I saw this little town of Whistle Stop, and it was the most amazing moment. It was like, had I been a painter and painted a picture, it would be like walking in the picture. It was just wonderful.
I always love, you know, especially when you're doing a film about a book, and you get a chance to suddenly walk into it, to walk into the book, you know, when you come on set, especially on location. Suddenly it's there.
There are probably 50 or 100 jobs that were created when we left there because they opened the cafe up after we left. And a lot of the buildings that we had pulled the kudzu off of now are filled with merchandise. And it's basically a shrine to the to the movie, but the cafe itself is very profitable. It has like an hour, 2-hour waiting, for a table in there. It's got all these props and photographs from the movie, and it literally came back to life.
It became the largest tourist attraction in central Georgia. It was really an amazing feeling for us to see that a town had rebuilt itself, and that much like in the story, that a town would live again.
The little Whistle Stop Cafe was such a great spot. I guess it's open now as a real restaurant. I'd love to go back, because every time we're on the set, I'm like, God, I wish I could really order something right now,
You ever been to Whistle Stop?
Why, yes. I just passed by there today.
So, here it is, Whistle Stop Cafe. Pretty much as it looked like in the movie. As sort of a kind of joke, I told Jerry and Robert after the movie they should turn this thing into a cafe. Be ashamed to have all the set decoration and all the work Barbara Lang did designing the place and just throw it all away. And little did I know that this sleepy town that had no employment, nobody in here, would become a sort of net employer of about 100 people. One of the top 5 tourist spots, I think, in Georgia right now. But this was an antique store. An antique store that every time I was here was never open. Barbara Lang had found it on a location scout. Remember that?
Right, right.
And she wouldn't tell me about it. I saw some pictures of it. But what really did it for me was not just the building itself, but the proximity of the water there. I thought it really added something and opened up the movie. As well as the fact that from the inside of the cafe, you could see the railroad tracks over there. So I could tie in the train, which was such an important element of the town, with the cafe. When we first came here, there was no depot. And if you pan over there, you can see something that's remarkably similar to a depot. That depot is the original depot for East Juliet, which is the name of this town. And that depot was stuck right in the middle of the woods with trees literally growing through it. And we asked if we could pull it out of the woods and rejuvenate it and put it in the movie, and we were told yes. We found some local guys who cut a path through the trees to get in there. We cut all the trees outside, and they put it up on rollers, and they brought the damn thing out of the woods. And then if you pan down here, they put it where it originally was, right down there, where nothing is now. There's a reason that there's nothing there, because Southern, which runs the railroad, wouldn't let them keep the depot up there, which is so stupid. I mean, they're worried about liability, and granted, there are big liability problems for owning railroads and whatnot, but, I mean, look at this thing. It's just beautiful, and it's such a gorgeous little town.
Down there at the end of the street, there's a house, and there was one woman who lived on this street when we first came here. And she became part of the movie. She was one of the extras, and I still remember when we all left, her standing at the end of the road and waving like this, because we had become her family, But I guess after the movie, a lot of other people came here too, so she didn't have to be lonesome.
You ain't fooling me, girly girl. I know who you are.
The friendship, I think, that develops between Evelyn and Ninny is that it's something that we need more of in our society today. The old have so much to teach us and so much to give us, and they're often not given that opportunity, and they're shut away. And they need to retain their place in society as the wise ones, the ones who've lived for so many numbers of years and know things that we don't know yet.
I think the simpler the people are, the less afraid they are of it. I think when we get very sophisticated, put a little fence around ourselves, maybe.
It's really about generations coming together, and it's about women coming together, but it's just about friendship and about a kind of friendship that transcends generations, times, races, sexes. It sort of is larger than the scope of one lifetime. It bleeds into another lifetime, and something I think in this modern time we seem to have lost is the oral tradition, the tradition of storytelling and of remembering your family and where you come from.
It's a movie ultimately about love, and it's a movie about friendship, and I think in the sort of go-go 80s and carrying into the same thing in the 90s, people have lost sight of really the essence of friendship and the closeness of other people.
I think we're much more dispersed nowadays, and I think a lot of us look back, and the ones who have known anything else, or old enough to know anything else, and regret it. It's a pity. It has many reasons, because we're all scattered now. We don't stay in one place and stick together and become a community that's rich.
That wasn't forgotten in Iggy. It wasn't forgotten in Ruth. You know, Evelyn remembered, Ninny remembered, and Evelyn learned, and her life was changed.
Friendship is sometimes it's not a strong enough word. It's a real bond. Somebody said that a friend was someone you could tell anything to, and they wouldn't judge, but only be there to hear you. And I think that's a wonderful way of thinking of it.
This crew was unbelievable. They would just go nuts to get shots done, and people worked so hard. I mean, it was real like labor of love for everybody in the set, and I think it shows in the film.
I just remember really moments of kind of contagious laughter with Kathy and Jessica and with the two Marys.
It is important to be able to laugh, and it's wonderful when you have, you know, when you're blessed with working with somebody whose sense of humor you understand and who understands yours, doesn't ask you to explain your jokes, you know. It just makes it so much more pleasant, and it just makes it so much nicer. And you have so many more memories. It seems the amount of time we spent shooting that movie was the same as a lot of other movies, but I have more memories because of her and because of the way that we interacted with each other, because we have more stories.
People say, oh, it must have been easy because you got to be such good friends. And really, I think we got to be such good friends because of the chemistry we had professionally, that it just clicked. She listens, she answers, and that's what I try to do. You know, she's very responsive and reactive and totally open and available, and you just feel like this is the most generous actor in the world. I could do anything, and she'll be right there. She'll be right there.
And I was barely on the film, and I felt like part of the family. I mean, I was there literally 2 weeks, and I knew everybody on the crew, and everybody hung out. And it's always fun when you do a film in a small town, because everyone lives, you know, in one of two hotels, and they're always going out together. And you work in, you know, 6 days a week or whatever, 5, 6 days a week. You just get to know each other really well.
This movie was a movie that got made against all odds, and and I have to be honest, it was the passion of one man that pushed this film through, and that was John Avnet. He had a passion for this film.
If I would characterize myself as a filmmaker, I'd say, well, I identify with the guys in the Westerns who want to die with their boots on. I'd like to die making a movie.
It's that drive and that passion to make sure that every frame has sort of entered your soul and come through your heart, you know, and out onto that screen that makes the movie, I think, as special as it is to this day.
The thing that was so sweet about him, I think, is he was so excited that he was finally making this movie. He was so happy about it. He would come out to the set, and he wanted to show us every set where we were going to shoot, everything, every tree. There was one day where he was like, okay, we're gonna go look at the tree that's gonna have the bee's nest in it. So he had his hat and his sunglasses and his loop, that thing that you look, you know, at the shots, and he wanted us to come and see everything. He was so excited about every little thing. And it was infectious, I think, for everybody, and it made everybody else really excited about it.
It kind of confirms my belief that that people really want to be moved and to feel things, and when they go to the movies. And you know, you can go to a movie and there are a lot of explosions, and that's kind of fun for 2 hours, and it's like you're on a ride at the theme park, but you don't take anything away. It doesn't move you, it doesn't change you, and this movie had that power to really touch people.
I was watching television when the nominations for the Academy Award came, and aside from being thrilled, I really think that John Avnet should have gotten an award, because he was so instrumental in writing too, you know, and he really deserved a directing award and a writing award.
I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to do this, to contribute to our popular culture.
I hope they'll come out smiling, having had a good time, will go and talk it over with their friends and not, you know, come out of the theater and forget all about it. And I think that this is particularly a story that can happen, because I think these people are all very well known to us all. I mean, it's part of our heritage, this kind of country, down-to-earth behavior. I think that Driving Miss Daisy, that was one of the things that made it so popular all over the world, that it was something that was positive, not seeing the worst of us, seeing some of the real basic goodness. That's not enough, that's not a good word, it's more than that. It's coming out feeling that they're glad to belong to the human race. How's that?
My favorite's fried green tomatoes.
Cute thing.
Sorry. You like me, don't you?
What's that stuff you got on?
Now don't you go thinking about those two with no clothes on.